All right. I think we're just going to get started. Hello, everybody. I know that there was one or two people that missed last week that were signing on tonight for the first time. Welcome. This is the Recycling Ambassador Program, week 2. So tonight we're going to be discussing reduce and reuse in Dakota County. So first off, we're going to be hearing from Emily Barker, who's the Executive Director of Reuse Minnesota. Excited to hear from her. And then also we're going to be hearing from my colleague, Jenny Kedward, who is actually the mind behind the Dakota County Recycling Ambassador Program. So she transitioned the program to me last fall, so she could work on her wasted food program. And I hope I'm saying that correctly, Jenny. Sorry if I'm not. You're going to hear all about it tonight. And so you'll be able to hear from the two of them. And then I'm going to cap things off talking about reuse in Dakota County. Let's dive in. If you have any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat because Jenny's helping monitor today. I will mention that I'm struggling with a sick toddler upstairs. She's very feverish today. And so I am going to step away briefly and I'm going to come back. So Jenny's going to help monitor the chat. She's more than capable. You're all going to have a really great time listening to Emily and Jenny speak tonight. So without further introduction, Emily, are you ready to go?
I am. And
all right,
how about just under 45 minutes? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Kirsten. And hello, everybody. My name is Emily Barker. I'm the Executive Director of Reuse Minnesota, and I'm excited to be with you tonight. I'm going to dive right in. A little bit about who I am. I am a long-term reuser. I grew up very much with the reuse mentality and get embedded in my childhood. I grew up in Montana, and we were reusers largely out of financial necessity, but also just the environmental side of things. My dad was a guy who taught pack it in, pack it out, light on the land ethics to folks looking at using the backcountry, and that's very much a big part of who I am. I have also been a materials management, aka waste management professional. I don't like the word waste personally because I like to think of the things in our world as resources and materials to be managed in more creative and useful ways instead of just wasted stuff. I worked for the Pollution Control Agency for about 2.5 years, and then I went to the city of St. Louis Park for 5 years, and I've been with Reuse Minnesota now for the last 1.5 years, which is kind of amazing how quickly that has gone. So I have been in this world for about 10 years and worked in both the government and nonprofit side. And in my work now, I get to work a lot with for-profit folks. So really excited to chat with you all and share some ideas for how you can incorporate it into your lives, whether it's individuals as citizens or into your work. This picture here is of a house we deconstructed in St. Louis Park several years ago. Reuse Minnesota is a nonprofit organization that has been around now for just over a decade. We are dedicated to leading a movement that's grounded in reuse. The goals we have are around building the next generation of reusers, supporting businesses that are in the space. And the work that we do is within education, promotion, and advocacy. So we do a lot of training like this, a lot of sharing of information. We promote our businesses and help connect folks with reuse resources. And we do some advocacy work, so policy at the state legislature and with government of various levels. So I'll share a little bit more about us at the end, but that's who Reuse Minnesota is. We don't have a storefront. Many people say, oh, I've donated things to your store. That's probably Habitat for Humanity Restore or Better Futures Reuse Warehouse. We don't have a physical space. What you see behind me is the office. And so we act sort of as a mini chamber of commerce for the reuse sector or an educational hub and resource for citizens and others. Why we are here. This cartoon, I think, is a good way to describe, I'm seeing lots of people kind of trying to zoom in on what we're seeing. So I think I'm actually going to unplug my other monitor here because I don't think it's as easy to see. So this picture here, though, just kind of easily shares what we're talking about, where we have very much developed a world where we buy things, we use them for relatively short amounts of time, and then we throw them in the trash. So our buyables become disposables, and there's not a lot of love for what goes into that, whether that's the resources, the water, the labor, or all the other things that go into making stuff in our world. And so Reuse Minnesota, you'll hear about, recycling. I'm not here to talk about that. We're going to talk about all the ways that we prioritize the best use of the materials we have. Question, are you seeing the right view now?
It looks great.
I gotta get a separate webcam, Jenny. That's my issue. So, all right, here we go. Hopefully this image is not new to you. Is this something that people have seen so far in class? Maybe in the introduction. So this is what folks often refer to as the waste management hierarchy. Again, I like to call it the materials management hierarchy. Talk about how we prioritize what we do with the stuff that we have when we need to be done with it. And we are going to be talking about the top two parts, reduce and reuse. As I mentioned, I'm not talking about the other parts. So to be clear, reuse is not, reuse and waste prevention are not landfilling waste to energy. So, you have a pretty big landfill down your direction, Pine Bend. A lot of the metro area trash is also managed. So in Hennepin County, it's managed at the HERC, which if you ever go to a Twin Stadium, that's where they burn garbage and make energy and heat from that. And in Ramsey, Washington County, their trash is shredded and turned into a material that then is burned at a different facility outside the metro. So we have a combination of ways that material is managed, but obviously neither of those are waste prevention or reuse, but that's how we manage stuff for trash. Reuse is not recycling. One of the most common things I hear from folks is, oh yeah, I reuse, I recycle everything. And what my job is today is to help you see where that line is, help you see the difference and why it matters. Finally, hopefully it's obvious, but reuse and waste prevention are not composting. Jenny's going to fill you with all sorts of great information on how to do waste prevention of food. And that's definitely a piece of it. I'm not going to touch on food, but reuse doesn't happen. We're not talking about composting when we're talking about waste prevention or reuse. That's what we do with the food that we aren't able to use. All right, so just basic definitions. So we're on the same page. Waste prevention, reduction, sometimes you hear those words used interchangeably. I would say generally speaking, they're accepted as interchangeable words. Some folks might argue a little on that, but more or less waste prevention, waste reduction, same intent. It's the avoidance or decrease in the amount of materials used. So we're just avoiding stuff up front. And again, Jenny will be talking about that in relation to food, and I'll be giving some examples as we go in relation to other items. Reuse is using the same thing or materials multiple times for their original purpose or reusing them for new. So upcycling, changing things, repurposing. And one thing I want to note is that because of the way that our society operates a lot these days, is that both of these things can require a fundamental shift in what I would call the mainstream way of thinking. And that it requires an adjustment in behavior. Now, I will tell you, so I'm an older millennial, and again, I grew up with reuse and waste prevention as a big part of my life. But I think for a lot of us, we were very much raised and trained in convenience culture. The idea that you get the things you need quickly, you dispose of them, and sort of don't worry a ton about the consequences of that. And so reuse isn't necessarily the first way of thinking. Now, it may be for those of you who are in this class because it's something that's the reason you're here. Or maybe it's not, and that's the reason you're here, is you want to learn how it can be more the way that you think. But I just want to call out that, like, if anyone feels like, oh my goodness, this is so overwhelming, she's talking about all these things, just understand that this can be a process. It can take time to learn these behaviors when we have been trained for the better part of 50 years that convenience and ease are the #1 priorities when it comes to stuff. So just so everybody can take a breath in case that's a source of anxiety for you. All right, so the first thing though, I want to, as we get into this, is a lot of people say, well, isn't just the goal of this avoiding the trash, right? We just want to avoid putting stuff in the landfill. That's often what you see is like our landfills are filling up, the litter is a problem. And that is certainly a very visible part of the problems with dealing with stuff. But it's a pretty minimal side, a part of it when we talk about the impact or the product life cycle of the things we use. So when we talk about, say, your favorite t-shirt, that t-shirt will eventually wear out and you'll need to figure out what to do with it. Maybe you turn it into rags, or maybe you turn it into a quilt or something, you figure out, or maybe you trash it. But that is a very small part. All of the things that went into making that had a much more significant impact than what you ultimately decide to do with it in the end. So the extraction of raw materials, cotton is incredibly water intensive, dyes to dye materials, so denim, they say it takes about 2,000 gallons per pair of jeans to make a pair of denim pants. So you have a lot of materials and chemicals that go into raising cotton and things like that. You have the product preparation, so the washing, the preparation of processing the cotton and turning that into an actual fiber that can be reused, getting maybe plastics. If you have a lot of pants and shirts these days have polyesters or other synthetics, so that's oil, right? Or some sort of fossil fuel that goes into that. Those fibers are then woven together in the product manufacturing. Maybe you have some metal for buttons or some plastic laminate imaging, things like that. So you've got all these resources that go into that. Then you have product distribution. So whether it's from overseas or domestic, and then the product use is where you and I will come in, and then the product disposal. So as you can see, all those upstream impacts are huge for a product. And by comparison, the use, with the exception of a few categories of things, the use is very small when we talk about overall life cycle impact. So recycling and composting help because they eliminate the raw materials extraction, or they greatly reduce it. Now, say like in the case of a pop can, when you buy a can of soda, that pop can very likely has recycled content. But unfortunately, because of the way that aluminum kind of breaks down over time, there's usually always some virgin material in a can. So you have that material be coming in. Or like paper can only be recycled so many times. That's about 7 times before the fibers are too short. So it does help with reducing overall the amount of material extraction, even if things can't be 100% recycled. But you reduce that, and that is huge, right? Especially as we're talking about fossil fuels or mining. Think about your smartphones, the amount of mining that happens to make an electronic device. So that is a huge factor. We still have all the other pieces, but that certainly is helpful when it comes to how we deal with stuff. Reuse, of course, eliminates the raw materials extraction, the materials preparation, because the item's already made, and the product manufacturing. It can also eliminate the product distribution, like if you buy a reusable water bottle and you use it over and over and over, so then there's no need to redistribute it. On the other hand, if you've got clothing that your kiddos grow out of and you donate that, maybe it goes to, like somebody mentioned, Ridwell at the beginning. So okay, it goes to Ridwell and then they take it somewhere and then they reprocess it and distribute it. So there is an element of product distribution when you talk about thrift stores and those type of ecosystems. But if you're buying a product for yourself that you then use over and over and over, of course, then you eliminate that. But as you can see, reuse does a great job of eliminating a huge portion of that life cycle. So we're able to take out some of the most impactful parts. On the other hand, the last part, waste prevention, elimination, eliminates all of these. So if you don't have something in the first place, and that might be an obvious thing to state, but I think it's worthwhile to just visualize that if you don't make waste in the first place, you don't have to do any of these pieces. So if you reuse what you have, if you participate in, like Jenny will talk about where you don't make the waste, you're conscious about that, then you avoid those resources in the first place and all the other pieces. So the big thing is to think about that waste prevention choices start very early on, right? They start when you're walking down the aisle at a store, when you're online shopping, which we know can very quickly result in many boxes on our front steps, and not where we typically think about waste, which is at the trash can and at the curb. So most of the time, we're not thinking about how we're going to deal with something until we've already got it, and not necessarily thinking about how to avoid it in the first place. So what does waste prevention look like in the world of hard goods, the non-food things, but in the world of the everyday things? So it might include things like lightweighting materials. We might not necessarily recognize that that's happening, but for example, you have less and less material being used in things whether it's like a durable good or a pop bottle for that matter. So a water bottle or pop bottle from 20 years ago 15 years ago had a very different feel to it than now. Now they're super flimsy and crackly. Before it was like a heavy duty. Now, of course, some of those systems in certain part of the world, even 10 years ago, still allowed for reuse and refill. So that's a different thing. But the water bottles we have now, the single-use stuff, they've been lightweighted. So there is an element of waste prevention that happens within single-use items, but it definitely happens in reusables too. So we use less materials, lighter weight materials in order to achieve the same goals. We might use secondhand materials in a product that we make. So we might utilize, it's a little bit of reuse, a little bit of waste prevention. Designing for disability or durability and disassembly. So for example, if you have an electronics item that's meant to last, right? Not meant to break the first time you drop it. And it's been designed to actually be taken apart. Or the example on the slide is a chair, where there are some companies that actually design chairs so they can be easily taken apart and a single part can be replaced instead of everything being glued together and really hard to take apart. That you could just replace the back if it breaks or replace the arm if it comes off without having to throw away the chair or start over. And then, of course, eliminating waste just by avoiding it in the first place or choosing to repair and maintain items. Repair is one of those things that falls a little bit in waste prevention and a little bit in reuse because, you know, you reuse something, you fix it so you can reuse it, but you're also using what you already have so you don't have to buy a new one. So it's in that kind of the overlapping gray area between reuse and waste prevention. But you can kind of get an idea of what some of waste prevention looks like. In reuse, this is probably something you're familiar with a number of these secondhand retail, whether that's clothing or furniture. Building material reuse is growing every day. Fortunately, this is something very exciting. And like Dakota County has grants to support deconstruction. And so if anyone has a building project that you're working on, make sure you check that out. I don't know if Kirsten or Jenny have shared those yet, but they have great grant options to support that. Refurbishing electronics and buying electronics that have been refurbished, borrowing things and renting things before you buy them. And so we'll talk more about that as we go. So a few examples here in Minnesota. We have places like the Habitat Restore where they sell furniture or building materials. Repower does electronics. Rethos teaches classes on how to maintain your old windows and other like older homes. Rethink Tailoring teaches classes on how to do mending and does one-on-one instruction on upcycling your clothing. You might go to a Dakota County swap. It says city sponsored. It should also say county sponsored swaps. And so they have some scheduled coming up where you might go and check out one of the swap events where you could take items that you already have that you don't need, or instead of buying something, go and see if you can find it at the swap. So there's lots of different organizations. The ones I've listed here are all part of our membership. So we, as I mentioned, are made up of members that are businesses and such. And so if you look on our directory, which I can share in the chat when we're done, or maybe Jenny can share that, we have a number of businesses that do reuse work. And so those are some great ways to reduce and repair, reuse and repair and reduce your impact when it comes to items here in Minnesota.
What does Birch Group do?
So she does deconstruction as well. And she has a store too where she sells the things that they deconstruct. All right, so thinking about how you implement some of these things into your own life. As we mentioned earlier, this conversation has to happen before you buy things, when you think about being able to reuse things. So the first question I always like to ask myself is this something I really need? Now, I'm not here to tell you you can't just buy things for the fun of it and for the want of it, but to re-examine that and just ask that question and be intentional about asking that question. You know, is this an impulse buy just because it's whatever, and I already have like, oh, this water bottle at this event is really cute and I'd love to add it. It's got my favorite color and my favorite band name, but I've got 6 at home in the cupboard already that are perfectly good and usable, and I don't use half of them already, right? So that's like a question to think about. Can existing items you have be repaired? So okay, I love to buy a new item, but I really have one. It just needs a little bit of love. Can I do that myself? Can I find somebody who could do that for me? Could I ask a friend that might be able to help? Can another item I have serve the same purpose? This is a question I especially like to ask when you look at kitchen gadgets. So there are all sorts of little gadgets out there that folks would love to sell you to do all the unique things, when the reality is that majority of us don't need most of them. Now, there are many things that make things easier for folks who maybe have limitations with how much they can do with their hands, and that's certainly, there's value to that. But for a lot of us, learning how to use our knives and cutting boards a little bit more efficiently means that we can avoid a lot of those specialty items in the kitchen. This also goes for tools. So if you look at the garage or the basement, same sort of idea, right? These can accumulate and take a lot of resources. And this even happened in my house too, where you buy one, you're like, why did I buy that? Why did we buy a nail gun? We were doing this happened where we like bought it to do trim. And it's literally not been used more than once or twice since then. It's like, why did we do that and not just rent one? And I don't know. It happens. So I'm not to say that anyone's perfect, but that's a question to think about, right? And then could you borrow or rent an item instead? So can I ask my neighbors, which I realize is not a cultural norm. And I think that this is something that would be great to change. And I think Buy Nothing, I know that was mentioned at the very beginning, somebody brought that up. Buy Nothing is a great place to start. So if you're on Facebook, or they also have an app now, if you're interested in connecting with folks for items that you might be able to get, but borrowing is a great, the Buy Nothing groups are a great place to borrow. So somebody in my group just recently asked if someone had a nail gun, and I said, guess what? I actually do. Just let me know when you need it. You can come over anytime. So these are kind of some great questions to ask yourself. Side note, if the picture there is of a poster that's from about 100 years ago. This is a World War I poster. Use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without. I think that's a good mantra that's worth adopting for most of us. The next stop is when you do buy things. And the image here is of what somebody named the hierarchy of needs. So apologies to Maslow, they said, and they said, the smallest thing is buying. The foundation is using what you have, then borrowing, swapping, thrifting, making, and then buying. So when you do buy, if you do realize, okay, I've got to buy something, so the kind of swap on up or thrift on up, consider used first, right? So if you can, take some time to go to the thrift store, buy it off of Facebook Marketplace or wherever, Poshmark or whatever platform you like, try that first. See if you can utilize something that someone else already has. Buy and prioritize durable, reusable items. Now, I realize that some of these items are definitely more expensive, and it's not always an option for everybody. For me, I try to buy like things that I know I want to have last for a really long time. So an example is about 4 years ago, I needed a new winter jacket. I lived in Minnesota over a decade. And I was like, I need something that goes past my waist. I didn't have like a knee length coat, and I was tired of having my thighs freeze every winter. And so I said, I'm gonna make this investment. And I went and I redid my research. I found a product that had recycled down, and it was a company that's dedicated to repair. And so I thought it was a much higher investment than I might have typically done, but I knew that it was going to last me, for 15 years. The last time I bought a coat was 15 years before that, a winter coat. So it was like, I knew it's going to last me a long time. So I wanted to do that. And again, it may not be possible every time, but if you have that ability to save for things that are meant to be repaired, last a long time, and support companies that also try to do that is really a great option. Buying items with multiple purposes, as we talked about, and then also buy recycled content. So even though we're not talking about recycling, if you can, at the very least, if you are going to buy something that's recycled, because there's no point in putting things in the can every week or every other week if you're not actually buying things that are also recycled, right? So for example, here in Minnesota, we've got a company that makes recycled furniture, patio furniture, and they use milk carton or milk jugs, I think. If you have that option to buy a recycled content item, when you do need to buy something new, that is certainly a higher benefit than buying things made with virgin materials. This is a slide I pulled out. I used to just talk about it, but I've pulled it out as its own thing because I'm very passionate about this, because things like the stuff on the left accumulate in my house somehow because I have a child. And this is one that I think is valuable for everybody, regardless of your age. avoid the impulse to take free stuff you don't need. And if you have the choice and if you are responsible for it, don't give it out either, right? So if you work for a company that does a job fair every year and you hand out little trinkets, I would encourage you to consider asking somebody to rethink that, right? So where do those things end up? Most of the time, they're small little bits of plastic that get used for maybe 15 minutes to an hour, and then they end up in the trash, right? And so it's not something that gets utilized. A lot of times, those freebies at conventions are free for a reason, because the cost, the value is so low, the inputs, the material, the durability is very minimal. It's not meant to be something, it's meant to be advertising, right? It's not meant to be something that's great and lasts you a long time. It's meant to be advertising, and that's great to do cheaply, right? So if you have that choice, think about if there's other options. Could we give out a free movie ticket to people? Could we give out some other thing? I think about, especially if you're involved with schools or kids programming, are there ways that you can encourage people to do activities? So locally here in St. Louis Park, where I live, we have a nature center, and they have a Halloween event every year, and they hand out stuff like this, and it drives me crazy. And I've said, why not? You do this punch card thing anyway. Why not at the very end, you go to the end and kids get to pick up a $5 discount to a program that you offer in the summer, right? A voucher for a program. So you're still spending the same amount of money, you're getting people back into your program, and you're not generating any of that waste. Or, have the giant bag of Skittles instead of all of the individually wrapped ones. It's still some waste, but it's not all of it. Or have something that's a more of substantial that actually will last. So thinking about that, and also avoiding, when you are at those events, it can be so easy to just like, oh yeah, here's another, lens cleaner or another cushy football. And I can't tell you like how many of those things it's like they reproduce at night in your house. And so this is something that is a great way to think about waste prevention in your personal life and potentially professional, or if you're doing work as a recycling ambassador, that if you're going to hand out prizes at an event, think about that, right? All right, so I'm going to encourage you, we have a little bit of time, but if you can, take out a piece of paper or something to write on, and we're going to do a little shopping, which might sound funny given what I've just said. But this is going to be an opportunity for you to shop for some ideas instead of for stuff. I'm going to present a few different categories, and what I'd love for you to do is write down 3 of them that you would like to pledge. This is to yourself. You or someone in your household are the only ones you're accountable to. Pledge 3 things that you'd like to try in the next 6 months. 3 new things, or 3 things that you've wanted to do, and this might be like that thing, right? I always say if we write our intentions down or share our intentions with others, we're more likely to do them. So I invite you to come with me to the idea shop and see if you can't find a few things you might like to take home. The first thing we're going to talk about is shopping. And I start with the acknowledgement that sometimes when we go shopping, it's easy to bring home as much packaging, if not more packaging, than actual items, right? You come home, you get that bag of chips, and it's like a tiny little thing of chips and a huge bag. Now, sometimes that can be hard to avoid, but we can think about a few ways we can avoid some of that. So reusable carryout bags, hopefully that's not a new idea, but I encourage you to not just think about groceries. If you're going clothing shopping, if you're going to Target or one of the other larger stores like that, where you might be buying a variety of personal care items or other things, toys, anywhere you can take your own bag. Again, like the bags mostly serve the purpose for you to be a walking billboard, right? There's no reason that you can't use your own bag. So why not be a walking billboard for reuse, right? Think about that. Make one if you don't have one. Most of us have them coming out our ears because, again, to the previous slide, they get given out at events and then we take them and we have way too many. But if you do need one, a great idea is to use a t-shirt, an old just regular t-shirt. Maybe you've got one from a 5K that you did a few years ago and you just never wear it. You can cut off the sleeves, cut out the neck, and sew the bottom shut. And it makes a great there's tutorials. I can share a link after this, but great tutorials on how to do that. Use reusable bags for produce, right? Or reuse bags you already have. So you don't have to do anything fancy for this. If you get, fabric bags for anything, or if you have a produce bag, just use it several times. But there are reusable ones you can buy. Kids t-shirts actually cut into one of those little t-shirt totes are perfect for produce, especially things like bananas and oranges and things that, you know, aren't going to leak. It's great to just, I turned one of my kiddos' old t-shirts and it's great to do that. Reusable containers for buying in bulk. And again, you do not need to buy new. You could use glass jars, you know, save them from peanut butter, or you can use plastic too. Things that you would otherwise just put in the recycling. I buy coconut oil in these glass jars and they're great for that. So I have a bunch of these in my pantry and do that. Buy refillable personal care items or items with minimal packaging. So thinking about adopting bar soap instead of liquid. Bar shampoo is a really big thing right now. Get razors with replaceable heads and blades instead of the whole thing, disposable ones. Selecting items with less packaging, and then requesting e-receipts whenever possible. And if your favorite store doesn't offer e-receipts, ask every time when they're going to offer e-receipts, right? I actually find them great because you don't lose them. They're really easy to find in your, in your email or whatever next time if you have to return something. Party time. Let's make parties a time for celebrating, not making waste. And this is going to be tricky, right? If you're going somewhere, if you're going to go off out of your home. But if we think about it just a little ahead of time, or borrow from folks we know, we can do reusable plates, utensils, cups. I don't know if Kirsten's on, but she's borrowed my set before. I have a whole setup for this, and neighbors and stuff borrowed all the time. She borrowed some of my stuff for a birthday party last year. So if you can, put together a little kit or ask your neighbors if they've got things you can borrow. Use cloth tablecloths, buy bulk treats instead of individually wrapped things. Do reusable decor. This is a great thing, especially for birthdays that involve a number. If you say happy 5th birthday, think about how many of those are purchased and thrown away every year versus if we pass them on. And Buy Nothing is a fantastic place to ask for that type of thing. And then giving waste-free gifts. So sort of what I mentioned before about like the events, thinking about giving used or upcycle gifts, giving experiences instead of stuff, and wrapping material. Use, artwork, which is the example here. That bow is actually a bunch of strips of t-shirt material that I like tied together and stretched one out, and it made like a little wrap. So that's made my little reusable bow. Kids play. So whether you have kids or not, or if you're a teacher, or if you just have young people in your life, here's a few ideas. Buying used toys, joining the toy libraries. We have the Minneapolis Toy Library. You don't have to be in Minneapolis to use that. It's a great resource for kiddos 0 to 5. So if you know someone that's having a kid, it's also a great, you can gift them a membership, and they have sliding scale memberships. Buying quality items that can last, so they can be passed on to other kiddos, and making your own. Cardboard boxes are famous and hopefully always will be a toy of choice, but there's many other options. So I made a play kitchen out of an old entertainment center for my kiddo. We actually just got rid of it this year, but it was super fun. It was like whole kitchen, and it was super sturdy. For better or for worse, that thing weighed 1,000,000 pounds, but it was a lot of fun. Sock puppets, it's a pretty classic thing, but utilizing those missing socks, the ones that are missing their partners, things like that. Eating out. This can be tricky, but with some planning can definitely reduce the impact. So keep a little kit in your car. I have a clear, it's like a makeup bag or something like that. I don't know what it's from, but get yourself a little zippered bag. You probably already have 1 or 10. Get reusable items that you already have. So get a reusable container. It can even be the last container you had from takeout, right? It doesn't have to be something fancy. Get some reusable utensils. Again, use what you already have. You don't have to buy special bamboo or anything. If you're a straw user, include that. Get a cloth napkin. You can make cloth napkins pretty easily. If you've got an old tablecloth or anything that's got holes, you can cut that up and make it into napkins. It's great. Get a beverage container that can be used for hot and cold, and put those all in there, and then keep it with you. Whether if you carry some sort of bag, a satchel, a purse, a backpack, if you have a car, keep it in your vehicle, or just put it somewhere that when you dine out, or if you're going to a place that has food trucks, for example, that's a really great place to try to use reusables. Take it with you when you go. My little did you know here is that Minnesota state law does allow you to bring your own reusable to-go containers to restaurants. The key is that restaurant staff can't touch your container, so it is just for things like you'd have off your plate that you'd scrape in there. They can't take it to the kitchen and serve you into it. But this is something that a lot of people don't realize is totally legal and legit. It can feel funny the first time you do it. You're like, oh, I'm just kind of scraping things in my own container, but it's awesome. And it's kind of fun because you can help educate restaurant people too, because they don't always know that that's allowed. Refashion. Textiles have a huge environmental input. Talked about that a little bit earlier with life cycle. Think about shopping secondhand, attending clothing swaps on our website, on our events page. There are several clothing swaps coming up this spring and summer. Edina has one. April 20th is the one I know for sure coming up. Anybody can go to those events. It's a fantastic way to update your wardrobe. You're just not feeling things, or they don't fit for whatever reason, whether it's feel or fashion styles. You can take those and upgrade your wardrobe and get things for free. Wash and dry your clothes less often. People always kind of give me a funny look with this one, but this will lengthen the life of your clothes. If you can hang dry your stuff, they're going to last a whole lot longer. And this is especially important for synthetic materials for other reasons, including shedding of microplastics, which your clothes do that. And our water treatment facilities don't have a great way of dealing with them. And so all that goes into our waterways. Mending your items. Making yourself a mending kit. So this picture on the bottom is a little Altoid tin that we gave out to students in a couple of couple of schools this spring. So each student has a little thread and embroidery floss and needles and stuff. It's a great little thing. I encourage people, make one of these and put in everyone's stocking it. If you do holidays or some little prize, hand these out at an event instead of something, as a great way to encourage reuse and repair. And then if you do buy new, as we talked about before, buy durable things that are meant to be fixed. All right. I don't think, unfortunately, we have time to share, but unless we'll see at the end. But if you have, take a minute, write a couple of those down. Maybe there's something else I've shared. Spend 1 minute, and then I've got just a couple more. I want to add a couple of slides to make sure that nobody walks away feeling like the answer to all of the world's problems when it comes to waste are on your shoulders, right? Because that would be fair and reckless of me and irresponsible of me to make you feel that way. We know that these problems were here long before those of us were born in the room. This has been going on for a long time. This has been a cultural build, and it's not just in the US, it's around the globe. And so we know that there are things that are important beyond individual action, and policy really matters, which is why our organization does policy and advocacy work as well. And that our government needs to be held responsible and needs to hold companies responsible for doing their part to ensure that we have reusable choices that are easy and don't take tons and tons of work. So a couple I want to touch on just briefly are the ideas of EPR, extended producer responsibility, and right to repair. So EPR is essentially requiring manufacturers to have a stake in the game after they sell you stuff. And this can be done in a few different ways. Some laws require that companies manufacture repair parts after a product is done being manufactured. So in the EU, they have a law that says if they stop up manufacturing this type of washing machine, they still have to be making replacement parts for at least 7 years after that to ensure that if you buy it in the last year, you're not stuck with no ability to fix it if the belt breaks or something like that. Designing things, encouraging companies to design for long-term, not obsolescence, designing for repair and versus just replacement. So having policies that, like, if something's damaged, that you have the ability to fix that versus just saying, oh, send it in, we'll just send you a replacement, because that tends to be what the response is on so many things. And offering take back programs when things are truly done. So whether that's for mattresses or electronics. The other one, and they're very much connected in many ways, or they have overlapping goals, is right to repair. And this is the idea that you should have the right to repair what you own, and that if you don't have that right, you don't truly own it. And so we've been fighting for this here in Minnesota for 8 years. We are hopeful, cross your fingers, that we will actually get it across the finish line this year. We're feeling pretty positive about that. And I'll drop the link to that page if you like the idea of this policy. You can, right now is actually a fantastic time to call your legislators to tell them to support it. It's currently in both the Senate and the House omnibus commerce bills and is moving through that process. But it especially impacts things like your phones, your computers, but it also impacts farmers, farm equipment, and all of that is very electronified these days. Everything has the circuit board. And so right to repair ensures that we have the ability to fix that and have access to tools and parts and the things we need to actually fix the stuff we have. The final thing I have is an invitation to join us. You are welcome if you're so inspired to join us as an actual member. We offer memberships to individuals, businesses, and organizations. We'd also invite you to consider volunteering with us. We have a few opportunities actually coming up. We have a grant with MPCA to do textile mending events in Minneapolis. We have our conference in the fall, which I know Christina's on here. She attended, and then we'll have some volunteers opportunities for that. If you're so inclined, consider running for our board in the fall. We always are looking for folks who are excited about reuse, and we have that election in November. Attend our events. You can see our website there. We have several things, including speed networking next month, which we've done 2 of those so far, and they're really fun. All of our member events are on there, including the Dakota County swap events and fix-it clinics and all the other counties and cities that offer those events. Follow and support reuse legislation. Encourage your community to adopt policies that promote reuse. Actually, Jenny and I are part of a team of folks working on helping government adopt policies on internal reuse and reuse of taxpayer purchased materials that you all have, paid for your cities and counties to use. Tell your friends and families about the change you're making. I like to offer this one because one of the things I love about reuse is that it's a very bipartisan issue. Many people, regardless of their perspectives politically, are interested in reuse. And I think that that's fantastic. Doesn't matter the reason, if it's for environmental reasons or just the determination to do it yourself or saving things, the financial side, or you like the jobs aspect, reuse can bring a lot of different people to the table. And I think that that's a really fun way. You can just say, hey, guess what I'm doing? Next time you get together with your family and friends, just share that. And it's a great conversation. And follow us on social media. We're at ReuseMN on all the different channels, and we are pretty active on all of those. The last thing is my contact information, and Kirsten and Jenny can tell me exactly where we are for time. I think according to my stopwatch, we've got about 30 seconds, but I don't know.
Yeah, you're doing great, and it's okay. I'm next, so I can always be a little shorter. So we do have a few questions. Let's make sure I'm getting into all of those. Okay. There was a question. What I've learned so far is there are many tools in organizations to help with reuse, like Habitat. Is there a list somewhere that lists all these great resources?
Yeah, so go ahead.
I submitted the Reuse Minnesota directory.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, we have our directory. We have our events page, which is where you can find all of those things. We have on our website, we also have, I'll just stop sharing here. We have a kind of where can I, all these different things. Of course, the county offers a number of great resources for that too, where you can, find out. And actually Scott County, I forget, Nick can remind me if it's just stuff in Scott County or if it's beyond that too, but they have a great reuse map. So there are a number of different resources out there, but we have a bunch of them on our website, which I will plop in here in just a second.
And then any recommendations for South Metro grocery stores that offer fresh bulk items? Fresh Thyme in Apple Valley is pretty good, but I'm skeptical about Cub's bulk department.
Yeah, I don't know grocery stores in the South Metro that well.
Yeah, so we have Valley Natural Foods in Burnsville, and then there's Spiral Foods in Hastings. I think that's what you meant, Jenna? Do you want actually where to go to buy bulk groceries? I think that's what you meant. Moving on just to get all the questions in. Okay, that was just a comment. We did have a comment post-pandemic. Do coffee shops allow you to bring your own mug?
And I think the answer to that is it depends, but many do. The state law definitely allows it. Beverage containers are slightly different, regulated differently than food containers. And so that's why a barista can take your actual cup and refill it for you in a way that's different than a food container. So that's just something to keep in mind there. but a lot of them, I think, have started to accept them. If not, it's a good way to just send an email. Hey, when are you going to start accepting reusable cups, or when are you going to offer those? We do have a member that's called Good to Go Cups. They're a newer business, and they just joined us so late last year, that is working on setting up a lot of coffee shops around the metro with cups where you actually buy it, but it's like a standardized cup for the coffee shops. It makes it a little bit easier for them, for everybody using the same cup versus bringing in all different sizes and shapes of cups. So then they know, because one of the challenges is like, I don't know if this is 16 ounce or a 20 ounce when they're filling yours. And so this is like a standardized way for them to do that. But then they're also not responsible for washing them because it's your cup. So it's a new program.
And then last question we'll do is, thanks for all the great work of Reuse Minnesota. May I ask where you get your funding from?
Yeah, this is a great question. We get our funding from a few different places. Right now, a big part of it comes from a grant called LCCMAR, which is a long acronym that's basically legislatively designated funds. And further back from that, it's essentially environmental trust fund dollars, which is lottery money. So if you don't know that, there's funds that go from the lottery to support environmental efforts in the state. And so I know like Dakota County has benefited from that for the bison reintroduction. That same money is the money we get a good chunk of my funding, or our funding from, for my salary and my colleague. We also have our memberships, which is a really important part of that. So again, like if you're interested as an individual, or you know a business that might benefit from joining, we offer all sorts of things to amplify their business and such. So you can share that. And then we do take donations. We're actually in the middle of a 10-year campaign right now. We turned 10 in December, and our goal is to raise $10,000 by end of June. And one of the fun things we're trying to do right now is raise funds to support small businesses that aren't able to afford our membership. So we can kind of have a membership scholarship fund. So if you're inclined to do that, we would definitely not say no. And our conference supports our efforts too. We have sponsors, and we generate some revenue from our conference. So those are our main buckets.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Emily. And if anyone has other questions for Emily, Kirsten and I could also answer them, but we know where to find Emily, so we can connect you to her later as well.
Yes, and I'm just going to drop in as my last thing, my LinkedIn profile. If anyone's interested, I'm happy to be a resource and connect there. I use it pretty frequently, and so I'm totally fine if you want to send an invitation to connect that way too.
Great. Thank you. And with that, I will go next. So, all right, you're probably seeing my lovely face with my sister's face on a vacation in Mexico. Let me just share my slides. All right, you should be seeing the presentation and not my notes. So yell at me if you do. But here we go. So Emily set the stage for why prevention is such an important aspect of our whole system of waste and consumption. Super important. Have that same framework as we step into the food world. So just like prevention of stuff, we're going to prevent wasted food. Yes, so I guess I never introduced myself because I just came on with Kirsten and Emily. My name is Jenny Kedward, and I am on the Dakota County Environmental Initiatives team along with Kirsten. And I love this Recycling Ambassadors class. I helped create it back in 8 or 9 years ago. And I love all of you. There's over 400 of you. You're our biggest advocates, and we're so happy that you're here tonight. I have my personal passion in the waste world is talking about preventing wasted food. I have been doing, as we like to say, I've been talking trash professionally for going on 16, 17 years now. And this is one of the talking about wasted food is the highlight of my work. You'll notice that I might use a certain term here because words do matter. I don't say food waste, I say wasted food. And that really sets the stage because when we talk about food waste, we're actually go back to your English days, English lit days or English grammar days of food waste. Waste is the noun in that phrase. Food is just the adjective about what kind of waste it is. So then we talk about how to get rid of the waste. Where does it go? When really we should be talking about the food. So I say wasted food to really flip that and talk about the food and why it was wasted and how we cannot waste it. Hopefully that does make sense. All right, so let's dive into it. A great quote, there's so many quotes about food, but respect for food is respect for life and for who we are and what we do. And this, Emily mentioned she had an old WPA poster from 100 years ago. I have one too. And I love that because it's not like we're talking about anything new. We're talking about things that our grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, they all knew how to do because they had to. There was no environmental movement. It was more of survival movement. How do you get through with what you have? And we've just recently had to talk about environmental aspects of it because we've had this abundance of stuff after World War II with food, with consumption, with stuff. And that's great for, you know, our economy, but then we also have to deal with all of the things that went into making all of that stuff and food. And talking about all the stuff that went into making our food, we often forget now that we don't create our own food, we're not on the farm anymore, we go to the grocery store, we might have our groceries delivered to our doorstep. We forget all the things that go into making the food and getting it to us. And anyone who has a garden can tell you these things do come up. You need land and water, labor, energy, and money. You definitely know that from having a garden. It takes all these things to make our food. So when we're talking about wasting food, we're actually talking about wasting all of these things. Before we talk about how much food we're wasting, I want you to take a little guess here. Using the chat, I want you to type in what percentage of the world's livable land has been converted to farmland. So that's the world's livable land. Any guesses? So percentage, what percentage? Okay, Austin says 20%. 50%, thanks, Becky. 40%, 75%, 75. I love these. It's how optimistic or pessimistic are you, right? These are great guesses. Okay, so the answer, drum roll, it's half. So it's 50% of the world's livable land, so land that isn't wetlands or ice, has been converted to farmland. That's a lot, which goes into the next question. So now get your chat still out there. How much in the US alone, not worldwide, in the US alone, how much of that cropland is used to grow food we don't eat? So percentage-wise. Guesses? 50, 40, 60. $20, great guesses, everybody. 60. And clarification, you asked, do you mean the food that goes not to people? I mean all the food that was grown, sent to people, everything along the food chain. So the answer is 19%. So not as bad, right? Not too bad, but that is still a lot. So think about when you're flying on a plane and you look down at the US, you're flying cross country and you look down, what do you see the majority of? We see cropland. Like that is the majority of our land is used for growing food. So almost 20% of that land is used to grow food that we just throw away. It's a big deal. And why is that a big deal too? It means that it's not just using land and wasting it. Every time we use land for cropland, we're taking away whatever was naturally there. That means taking away people's homes, animals' homes, from bugs to plants to birds to bees to the mammals that were there. So every time that's 20% of land we're using that could have just been left to nature. Okay, let's talk about water. All right, here's one for you. How much water does it take to make an egg? You You can say 1, 2, 3. You can say the gallons, whatever it is. Okay, number two. Yes, number 2. Good guesses. Yeah, it is about 30. It's 30 gallons to make one egg. We did a campaign a few years ago about how much water it does take to make our food. And I did have a resident call me demanding, like, what are you talking about? Are you throwing 30 gallons of food or water away with the egg? I do not understand. So of course, it's not just the egg, right? It's everything that went into making that egg. It's all of the farmland, growing the feed to grow or to give to the chicken, growing that chicken, making it bigger, making it produce eggs, all the water that it took to wash the eggs, get the eggs to your grocery store. All of that takes water, and it all adds up. That's just one egg. There's another stat that just blew me away when I heard it. Say you go to a barbecue and there's a leftover hamburger. Throwing that hamburger away, or even composting it, not using that hamburger, it would be like taking a 90-minute shower. That's how much water is wasted when we do that. Because it takes water to grow all of our food. So a lot of the one thing that you might see on here, the tomato. We all grow tomatoes or not all, sorry. If you grow tomatoes in your garden, you'll know that it does take water, especially at the beginning of the season, to grow that tomato. We are much more efficient in our water use in the US. You know, from the last 100 years, we use water as well as we can on farms. So I'm not attacking any farms or ranchers, but it still takes a lot of water. And you'll see there that the pound of beef takes the most.
Hey, Jenny, you're a little spotty.
How much food is actually wasted? So there's a percentage that's going to come up, and this is the most important thing that you're going to get out of tonight for my presentation. 40% of all the food produced in the US is wasted every year. 40%. And I just am pausing to let that sink in, because that's a lot of waste. So what is 63 million tons? Because that's a lot of numbers, and our human species we're not great at numbers. So that actually means that if you put all of that into the state of California, or if you made a whole farm just for growing that food, it would take up 3/4 of California, one farm, to grow all that food that we throw away. It would be enough to fill 40-ton tractor trailers, like semi-trucks, and dump them in the landfill every 20 seconds. And then with that, a lot of times we say, like, oh, well, it's okay, we're going to compost it. Well, maybe here, but in the US total, we throw all of that food into landfills about 3 out of 4 times. So it's a lot. Next slide. And the problem with that is because landfills aren't great to put food in. So most of that food ends up in landfills. Materials are never sorted out for food. And that food is actually rotting over time and makes greenhouse gases called methane. So the difference between a landfill and a compost site, and this is important because a lot of people think that I get this comment when I do education is, well, it's okay because it's going to decompose in a landfill. Yes, in a way, but it's actually under very different environments than a compost pile. So when you put your banana peel in a compost pile, it's an aerobic process, which means it has oxygen. It does make a little CO2, carbon dioxide, but it breaks down much quicker and more naturally. When you put something in a landfill, if you put that banana peel in a landfill, it's under a no oxygen environment called anaerobic. That means the bugs that are eating that down in our landfill are producing methane, which is, 30 to 50% more harmful for our greenhouse gas than CO2. So that's a big deal. Another way to think about this is, say you have a head of lettuce. If you take that head of lettuce and put it in a compost pile, like a commercial compost pile, it'll take 6 to 9 months to break down. In a landfill, it doesn't even start breaking down for 5 years, and then it takes about 25 years to decompose. So yes, it kind of does break down in a landfill, but not how we want it to. Next slide. That's all just talking about the environmental issues. We also know we have this huge food insecurity issue, right? 1 in 7 people are food insecure in the US. 11 million children are food insecure, which means they don't know where their next meal will be coming from. And 18 million children are projected to be food insecure this year. That's a big deal. So yes, I heard a comment earlier when we were starting the presentation tonight of, well, composting organics, like that seems bad. Like I feel better about at least composting it. Yes, there are things that we are not going to be able to use, and we're going to talk a whole night about composting. Composting is great, and it has its benefits, but wasting that food in the first place is, remember, wasting everything that came before it. So composting is great, but it won't save us in this huge wasted food issue. Next slide. So speaking of that, you might have seen this in your reading, or Kirsten might have mentioned it already. You're going to see this hierarchy a lot. Usually we call this pyramid or hierarchy of just waste in general, and reduction is on top, followed all the way down to landfilling. Well, the food world also has a similar hierarchy for that too. So we start out with source reduction, then donating food to hungry people, then feeding animals, whether that be your dog or actually sending it to a farm to feed pigs or chickens. Then we turn it into industrial uses, like to put in into commercial feed for animals. Then composting, way down there, is our last resort under this whole hierarchy, last resort before landfilling it. So yes, composting is a way, it's one of those steps, but we have so many other uses for the food before that. Next slide. The next question, so that's the first thing people talk about when I talk about wasting food is, it's totally okay, Jenny, I compost, don't worry about it. And that's what I want you to take away from this is that is great, but we need to do more above composting. So let's move our thinking into using our food first. The next thing people tell me is, Jenny, you should really go talk to all those restaurants. They waste all the food. Well, there's a point to that, but let's talk about who is wasting this food. Next slide. First, in the world, who is wasting the most food? You can see the top of each of these bars, with it's more shaded, is on the retail side. So the producers, farmers, processors, retail, like grocery stores, restaurants. Then the more solid part of the bar at the bottom of each of these rectangles is consumers. So you can see, yes, consumers do make up a lot of that waste, but we're actually, we have one of the highest bars of consumer waste in the whole world. Next slide, let's talk about a little more about that. So everyone is involved in wasting food. It is not just you, I'm not just blaming consumers. Everyone along the whole train of food is wasting. There's always a waste in every part of this. And we are working at a county level, regional, state level, and national level to try to minimize this. So production, for instance, some of you might have been raised on farms or ranches. That's great. You actually know a lot about the waste that might happen on a farm. So farmers need to hedge their bets, right? So they need to make sure that they're growing enough. They can't predict weather, insects, like drought conditions. They need to make sure to grow a little more to make sure they have enough. They also need to grow a little more to have some in the shoulder seasons, the spring and fall, for people who want it. This picture that you see below production is actually a food waste or wasted food prevention advocate that is in South America, and he's standing in front of a huge pile of bananas, which I had to crop this, but it's a huge pile, 5 feet tall. And those bananas are all going to the dump because they did not meet the grocery store specs for the right curvature or length. The only thing wrong with them is they weren't the right perfect banana in looks. That's it. Now you might blame those manufacturers or the grocery stores putting those standards into place, but guess what? We're the ones demanding perfect food. The farther we've come from growing our own food, the more we've forgotten that food is not perfect when you grow it. Anyone who's grown tomatoes will tell you that. It's 1 out of 10 tomatoes will be like the perfect tomato. So think about all those tomatoes that would have been thrown away from your plant that didn't meet grocery store specs. Now, moving on to handling, this is a very frightening sight of a beer truck that went over and all of that beer is wasted. For shame. So all that beer will be thrown away. Nothing wrong with it. And this is just an exaggeration of there's things that happen along the way. Every time food is touched along this whole process, there's an opportunity for it to be wasted. So if it has to be under temperature controls, that temp truck, that cold truck might have not been checked when it should have, and everything inside that truck would have been thrown away. So think about that for every time food has to travel, that could happen. Then we go on to processing. So think about the grocery store in your mind. Everything on the peripheral of the grocery store is more fresh food. It's whole food. You got your eggs, your milk, your produce, some of your breads. Everything inside inside of the grocery store, like in the middle of it, is processed food. So that means more people touched it and it had to be packaged and cooked and gone through a lot of different processing. This picture is actually of potato peels that are from a potato chip factory, because guess what? Your potato chips don't have peels on them. And that's waste, right? So all that nutrition, and actually the most nutritious part of a potato is in the peels, that all now is going to the landfill. And even if it did go to a compost site, it's not being eaten. So all those amazing nutritious calories are going to waste. Then yes, we do have retail. So retail means grocery stores. It's where you interact with the food to buy it, you as a consumer. So yes, restaurants, grocery stores, cafeterias, they do waste a good amount of food because also we've put that pressure on them to have every choice at every time of day. I pick up donated food from Panera every Tuesday, and actually I'm doing that after this presentation. And I always ask, like, why do you have so much bread and bagels to donate? Like that, thank you for donating, but why? Like, it's a waste. And they say because people come in at 8:58 right before closing and they want all the bagel choices. And so we're putting that onto our grocery stores and retailers to have all of that. Not saying it's all our fault, but know that you have choices and that you have a voice for good and bad. Next slide.
Hey,
Then,
Jenny, there's
yes,
a quick question.
I did see the question of imperfect, and I don't want to get into imperfect and misfit produce too much. It is an option, and I definitely, I am a personal shopper of imperfect produce, which has now just merged into misfit produce. Those are great options to try to kind of quote unquote rescue food that might be off spec. Those are wonderful opportunities for you. And yes, we want more of that. And also with farmers markets, go to your local farmers markets because they're not selling all the perfect things. They're selling the things that might not make it to the grocery store because they're not perfect. So I don't want to take too much time on that, but yes, I'm a supporter of those, and please look into them if you're curious. Okay, then consumers, that's us. So plate scrapings, I'm not talking about just the plate scrapings, but if you can imagine, I'm sure if you're picturing your fridge right now, you might have one of these containers of dead food in your fridge. You are not alone. I can tell you, I'm thinking right now of a Tupperware full of cut cauliflower that I forgot about, and it's been there for 2 weeks, and I'm pretty sure it's that smell in my fridge. We all do it, even when we're teaching about it. But this actually adds up a lot. So yes, there's other parts of the system that are making up this wasted food, but because there's just so many more of us and we're all doing some wasting, it adds up so much more. But guess what? That means we have solutions. So go to the next slide. That's why I love talking about wasted food, is because we know, go ahead, you're good. We know what the solutions are. We just might have forgotten or need reminding of them. So click once. The solution is prevention. And we're going to go through all of the different ways to prevent wasted food in our homes tonight. And then we'll come back to other solutions as well. Next slide. I've been doing these presentations for 6 years, and I have never met anyone that enjoys wasting food. It's like ingrained into our culture, our psyche of no one wants to waste food. We feel bad, we feel guilty. And the great thing is that we know from lots of research why we waste food and what to do. And they're nothing extraordinary. I'm going to go through them and you're going to be like, well, yeah, but what's the magic bullet? Like, this is it. We just have to change a few of our habits. Okay, so what are we doing? Anyone feel like this in the grocery store sometimes? I know I do. Just like I'm so done with grocery shopping. It's been a long day. The reasons why we waste food are as simple as these bullets. Our brain is on automatic, so we're not being mindful about what we're doing. We have a dynamic lifestyle, which just is a fancy term for busy. And this is especially goes into, researchers tie it to younger folks, so 20, 30 somethings. Although I know everyone in every age that's very busy. No planning. Maybe you weren't taught planning. I know I wasn't. I know meals showed up on our kitchen table, but I didn't know how they got there. I just thought my mom made it up at 5 o'clock every day. No planning, pretty basic there. And maybe no planning because we're busy and we're on automatic. And then improper storage. So actually storage is a huge thing that we're going to talk about too. Next slide. Okay, so we know those 4 things, right? We know the reasons why we waste food. So let's talk about the tools to not waste food. The biggest thing, I always say this is like the least sexiest thing I'm going to talk about tonight, but it is the most impactful. It's actually tracking what you toss. We just did a 4-week Save the Food challenge in February where we had participants sign up to track their food, preventable food waste, for 4 weeks. And it might seem silly, and maybe you're already kind of doing that because you're in a composting or organics program, but actually talking about, or like putting it in a bowl or a bucket, the food that you could have eaten and didn't eat. So I'm not talking about food like eggshells or banana peels. Those wouldn't go into this tracking. It's things that you know you could have eaten but didn't. And that's different for everybody. Like in my house, we eat broccoli stems, but we don't, but other people don't eat broccoli stems. So it's up to you, right? So actually tracking for 2 to 4 to 6 weeks will tell you what you're doing in your house, because I can't tell you what would work for you because I don't live with you. I have definitely offered, like, hey, do you want me to come live with you for four weeks and judge you on all of your kitchen skills? No, no one wants that. So you can put it down on this paper and not have me hovering over you. And we'll list these, we'll follow up with all of these tools at the end as well. Next slide. Okay, so the next thing, again, like not revolutionary, but it actually helps. Meal planning. Now you might not associate meal planning with lowering waste, but it's one of the biggest things you can do. And I know it doesn't seem revolutionary, but it's one of the #1 things people will get out of our 4-week Save the Food challenge is just being mindful, and being mindful goes into planning. So things that we've learned though, because meal planning has differed, you've probably seen a million meal planners. Usually they're for dieting or budgeting. I know I got into meal planning when I was 30, one, because no one taught me, but also because I was on a very tight budget and I needed to plan my meals to just save money. I was in the grocery store with a calculator kind of thing. But it also has a huge impact on the waste we have in our kitchens. So the 2 biggest things I'm going to tell you from this, from a meal planner is don't plan more than 3 to 4 meals a week, which I know shocks everybody. But the biggest setup for failure you can do is trying to plan every day, because inevitably something will come up because we're all busy, or you have more than enough leftovers from one night, and so you eat it another night, and now your meal plan's gone to waste. So what I tell people is only focus on meals for 3 to 4 days. With that, put in what 3 to 4 days you want. That will be determined by your evening activities, what's going on. If you know you're gonna have a really long day at work on Tuesday, or that you had to be in class for recycling ambassadors until 8, you know you're not gonna cook. So maybe having something leftovers or something that you can pop in really quickly or takeout would be great for that night. So only focus on 3 to 4 meals. The next big thing, I'm not gonna go into all of this, but the next big thing is putting your recipes down, like at the bottom of this slide, meals to make, you put that down. Go shop your kitchen first. Go look in your cupboards, go look in your fridge, see what you have, and then what you don't have is what you're gonna go grocery shopping for. Obviously, not rocket science, but we've all been there where we're standing in the grocery store and we're like, do I have mayonnaise? I better just buy it. And then you have now 2 huge jars of mayonnaise. We've all been there. So really go look at your fridge and your cupboards first. You can also do the reverse of that. You can actually go shop your kitchen first and then make your recipes from that. The other thing people have told me is that they get really overwhelmed with like, well, I don't even have time to just sit there and go through recipe books or go through Pinterest or go through online recipes and blogs. No one wants to read any blogs. So the biggest thing you can do is actually keep a list that you and whoever's helping, like your spouse, your kids, keeping a list that you all share of your go-to favorite recipes, and picking the majority of your weekly meals from that list, because you know you like it. You've already done it, so you kind of know how to make it. And then adding maybe 1 or 2 new meals to the rotation so that you can start adding more to your favorite meals list. Having that meals list or the favorite meals list will really help when you're just stuck and you don't know what to do. Next slide. And I could speak like an hour on all of these, so I'm trying to like move it along. Okay, making food last longer. This is the most fun thing people love to talk to me about. So click until it gets all the way to 4. So the first 2 are how to make food, like they're the short term making food last long. The last 2 are long-term food storage. So we're going to go through each of these except preserve. We're not going to talk about preservation, which I mean canning, drying, making jams, all those things that you might feel overwhelming. We're not going to talk about those. The 3 top things, fridge, storage, and freeze, are the biggest things you can do to make a difference. So let's go to the next slide. Let's meet our fridge. So our fridge, one of the biggest things you can do too in your fridge is keep track of the temperature. So newer fridges have a nice, digital display and tell you. I have an old style fridge which has that useless dial 1 through 5, which I don't know what it means. So I actually bought a thermometer, like a little commercial thermometer, to put in my fridge so I know that it's at the right temp. So it can be from like 38 to 41 is kind of the range. Also, the coldest part of your fridge is the inside middle part of your fridge, where you kind of see that milk in the image here. Milk and that area is the coldest part. The warmest part of your fridge is the door. That's why you should never have things on the door that can go bad. So your milk shouldn't be there unless you have a family that goes through like a gallon of milk a day, which it doesn't matter how long it stays there. But if you need milk to last a week, don't put it in your door, which is so silly because we always see milk in the door, right? Okay, so we'll go on to the next one. The other thing, we're going to send this out as well, is there is a way to store all your food to make it last longer. So we're going to send this out. You can also go to our website for it to get tips, or savethefood.com. This is from savethefood.com. So we've never been taught how to actually store our food. We've always just kind of done what our parents did, and then their parents did what their parents did. so it's kind of funny because food storage, like think of the amount of change that has happened in the last 3-4 generations. Yeah, no one's ever told us where to put our food. Isn't that crazy to think about? Like from salt preservation to ice boxes to our first commercial fridges to now, no one's really talked about it. So the big takeaway that I'm going to leave you here, because I'm not going to go through every single how to store everything, is think about where you got it in the grocery store. Did you get that produce from like the cool area where it kind of, showers, rains a little bit, like it stays moist over there? All of that usually goes in your refrigerator. Everything, did you get your tomato or your apples or your potatoes in the middle part of the grocery store where it's kind of dry and just in kind of crate looking things? So you don't want to put those in the fridge. You want to keep them out on the counter or in there, like potatoes and onions go in darker places or cool, dark places. So just keeping that in mind, if you don't remember anything else, think about how the grocery store does it. And what you might not realize is like potatoes in the grocery store, they actually cover them up. They cover them up at night so that they don't grow eyes from the light that they see. Next slide. Freezer. So the last one here is get to know your freezer. Your freezer is your friend. And I don't know why I always thought it was just for ice cubes for most of my life. I love my freezer as a very busy person because that means I have dinner for the future. I didn't waste anything. I don't have to eat those leftovers again for the 3rd time this week. So some tips for freezing. Freeze in portions because you don't want to put a whole thing of soup in a big gallon bag. But in the future, you only need some of that soup. Well, you're going to have to thaw the whole bag to get some of that soup. Freeze in portions, keep it airtight as much as possible. With oxygen is what's causing the, freezer burn. So trying to keep airtight. Leave room for liquids if you're freezing, of course, liquids expand more. Blanching, we're not going to talk about, but blanching is really just for vegetables to lock in nutritional value. And then labeling, everything looks the same in your freezer after a day. So label, 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 because you will not know what it is after a day. Next slide. The last tool that I'll talk about is remember what you have. So what's in stock? This is what we call our kitchen inventory. So we have this, you could print it out. You can make your own too. I actually just have a laminated piece of paper that is on my fridge and I use a dry erase marker and we write what's in our freezer. We're pretty good about knowing what's in our refrigerator and our pantry, but our freezer, no one wants to stand there with the door open, figuring out what's in the freezer. So in my house, we just made a whole sheet of paper on our fridge, what's in our freezer. If you laminate it, you can use dry erase or wet erase markers. I think I saw a comment, but I know other people who write just on the fridge itself and then erase, like use a dry erase marker and write on the fridge and then erase as you go. That's doable too. It's really just remembering it so that it's in one place so that you don't have to go searching for it. And next slide. Another trick that has worked for a lot of people is we know that we push food back to the back of the fridge. And there's been studies now that you actually will put food on a certain shelf and in a certain area of your fridge that mentally you're never going to look at again. Like we all have it. So figure out what that shelf is or that area of your fridge and block it off so that things can't get back there. Also having an eat first area of your fridge, like we have this is a similar setup that we have in my house where a half cut onion goes in there or the few mushrooms that we need to eat. So things that you will forget in the back of your fridge go in this box. Okay, next slide. Date labels. So we always get questions about date labels. So before you click again, I usually will bounce this off of the crowd of like, what is the one food item that is federally mandated to be date labeled? Most of the time I get answers of meat, dairy, eggs, yogurt, anything like that. And thank you. Yeah, you can definitely chime in. There's only one food that is mandated by US law to be date labeled, and that's baby formula. That is it. Every other date, and you can click the button. Every other date is made up by the manufacturer, and they mean different things. They could be telling you when it's fresh by, They could be telling you, it could be the manufacturer telling the grocery store when to pull it from the shelf. It has absolutely nothing to do with safety. And I just want that to settle in. And there are federal groups working to change this so that manufacturers only use certain, like not these confusing terms that we all think are bad. Date labels are actually a pretty new invention. So just think about what you would do if the date wasn't there. You would smell it, you would taste it, you would look at it, like use your senses to understand if something's bad. Okay, and my last few slides are just, that was all prevention. And then the next is, if you click again, Kirsten. The next thing, of course, is donating food. And we're not going to talk much about that, but if you are interested, I think we're going to hear more about that in one of the upcoming weeks. And then after that, click again, is of course diversion. So what do we do when things are wasted and we didn't get them, or we have peels and things that we don't eat? We still love composting and we want you to compost. So we're going to talk about that in future weeks too. So next slide is just a wonderful website. Besides our own website, savethefood.com is an amazing website for all the interactive storage. They have a guesstimator for understanding how much food you should make for a party, including leftovers. And then the last slide I'll leave you with is just, what will you do to make a difference? Like, this is one of the biggest things you can do as a consumer, as a person, as a resident, as a human on this earth, is to prevent wasted food. So what could you do to prevent that waste? Thank you. I see.
There we go. How about now?
Yep, see it.
All right. Woohoo. All right. So I know that Emily did great at discussing reuse in Minnesota. Great to have Emily speak. And then Jenny did great talking about wasted food. And so I'm going to just kind of breeze through these next slides about reuse opportunities in Dakota County. I'm trying to kind of bring it home to us on what we can do in on our local level. Before I forget, I am going to assign a fun little activity for us. And I know I didn't talk about this last week, but over this next week, I'd like you to set aside any junk mail that you may receive. I do a lot of senior presentations, and whenever I get to this part of my presentation, I make everybody raise their hand. Does anybody get junk mail in this room? And everybody goes, ha, 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 ha. So just something that you can begin to do in your own life is just collect your junk mail. Now, I might assume that my bills are junk. No, those are functional pieces of mail that I'm getting. Junk mail could be things like ads or campaign things that you're not going to read, whatever you might take and just put right into the recycling. So collect that stuff over the next week. And then I think I'll ask that you, if you have a food scale at home, mail it at home, weigh it in your home and just tell me how much that weighs. And we'll count that up and then I'll share the results next week. So I will send an email with more of the information along with some brochures and helpful handouts related to our topics for tonight. Okay, so reuse opportunities for Dakota County residents. Let me just get to this mode. Great. All right. So we love hierarchies in government, right? We've spent a significant amount of time tonight talking about how now reduce is the best thing that we can do for the environment. If there is a way that we can keep something from entering your shopping cart, that is the best thing that you can do. Once it enters your shopping cart, it becomes your issue. You have to find a way to dispose of that item, reuse that item. So for example, a glass bottle enters your shopping cart. Can you reuse that glass bottle over and over again? The glass bottle is already in your home. It's already been created. Can you reuse it over and over? If not, can you recycle that? That recycling is great, but it still takes lots of energy. So that's why this hierarchy is decreasing towards the bottom. And then at the end of the life of the product, that's obviously the least preferred method. So most preferred at the top, least preferred at the bottom. So if there's a way that we can reduce and reuse, we're making the most impact for our environment before we even think about recycling. And that's why we're diving into recycling next week, and we're talking about reduce, reuse this week. Alrighty. Just reminding folks, we talked about this last week. Christy did a good overview. For years, county government has spent a lot of time talking about recycling. So we have a current goal to reach a 75% recycling rate by the year 2030. Recycling is a lot easier for us to track and measure just because we can get weights from haulers, things like that. But there's no great way to measure, reduce, and reuse. And we currently have a 4% goal that we're trying to somehow achieve by the year 2030, but that's where we're at. So that's why this class is built the way it is. We spend more time talking about recycling and organics recovery because that's where our have been. And so just setting the frame there. This is a pie chart. We love graphs and charts in government, right? A pie chart showing the greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. This is back in 2009, so it's a little bit outdated. But as you can see here, this is where all the greenhouse gas emissions come from. The provision of goods is up here in the upper right-hand corner. And if we recycled absolutely everything in the United States, absolutely everything, we would only cut out this much. Here, I'm gonna slide this thing over. So if we recycled absolutely everything that we could in the United States, we're still gonna only cut emissions by 6%. That's not that much. So again, recycling is great, but it's not going to help us meet our goals. Next slide. On the flip side, advertisers really want us to link happiness with stuff, with buying more things, especially around the holiday season. I know that it's something that I see all the time. You know, they want you to get out and buy. They want you to buy that mug, you know, with a golf club and golf ball, right? They want you to get out and shop and make yourself feel happy. And that's something that a lot of people go out and do, right? And the reality is maybe this looks familiar to you. Maybe you know somebody with a cluttered garage. But when I think about what brings me joy, the reality is something more like this. This is something that would bring me joy, is spending time with friends and family or spending time outside. And so we're really thinking like in a counterculture way when we're thinking more about reduce and reuse and not even letting things enter our homes in the first place. So it's like retraining your minds to think differently. So how do we educate our residents about these kinds of things? Well, we are beginning to transition more. We're trying to learn more about our residents. I'm going to talk more about that at the end of my presentation. I know I only have like 10 minutes left. I'm going to try to be quick. So the different things that you can do at home is donate and sell your reusable goods. So you can drop off to most like local reuse thrift stores, like Goodwill, Salvation Army. There's a bunch in our area in Dakota County. And then selling your reusable goods, things like consignment shops. I know I got my wedding dress from a consignment shop. It was a great solution for me. So that's something that you can do. And then also I'm trying to also help people close the loop a little bit. We talk a lot about donating and selling, but not so much, you know, when you're dropping off your items, can you pull around and instead of just like going and shopping at Target for more new stuff, can you support that reuse retailer because they also need our businesses too. So we're trying to be good partners to our reuse retailers in Dakota County as well. This was mentioned at the beginning of our class tonight is the Buy Nothing group. I'm just going to do a quick shout out for it because I love it. Buy Nothing is something that's on Facebook. So I know not all of us are on Facebook and that's just fine. But is there a way that you can find used online? So Buy Nothing, it's community of, it's traditionally happening in your city or mine is in my neighborhood. And so you might post that you have like for example, a crib that you want to get rid of and it's only, you know, a few years old and somebody looking for a crib might feel more comfortable getting that from a neighbor that they can actually put a face to or a name to rather than buying something used, especially like children's equipment online. Not just children's equipment. It could be anything like household goods, clothing. I know we've gotten a lot of food that people are nervous about. They've got those, expiration dates. Now we know what that means. And so we go and we like snatch all that extra food up. But is there a way that you can find used online? We're finding that folks they're beginning to move more online instead of shopping more at like the thrift stores. So I was just talking about this with Jenny not that long ago, but Amazon even has an option where if instead of just buying everything new, I know it's super easy just to click add to cart. You can actually select a different button on Amazon to show whether or not an item is used, or if you can find like a air mattress. I was looking at air mattresses today, and it said that you could buy this price for new and then this price used. So it's just a different way that you can buy used if you want to shop on Amazon, for example. I know I'm going really quick. It's because I only have a few more minutes. Rental is another thing that people don't really probably associate with being reuse, but we have lots of rental businesses in Dakota County. We have costume rental, equipment rental, party rental, which is really cool, crown rental. But Dakota County Parks, they offer things like ski rental, canoe rental, things like that. I'll do a quick story. University of Minnesota, they actually have outdoor recreation equipment that you can rent. We rented a fat tire bike because my husband has way too many bikes. I actually have one behind me right now. And so you can go use their bikes for like a weekend, and then you can bring it back. So a rental assumes that you are exchanging some money for the temporary use of an item. So we have lots of different rentals in Dakota County. And so I'm going to talk about how you can find more about what rental locations are and where they're located in Dakota County in just a little while. Borrow. A lot of people might not even really think about it because they've been doing it for so long, but Dakota County libraries, they're amazing. They have so many things that you can borrow. So borrowing is assuming that there probably isn't an exchange of money for this service. So Dakota County libraries, you can rent things like books, movies, and they even have like 3D printers now, sewing machines. They have like book club kits, audio visual equipment for any project that you might have. Not just libraries, but even borrowing amongst neighbors. So for example, there was a gal that was getting married in my neighborhood it was last summer, and she didn't want to go out and buy a bunch of yard games. She was just getting married in her backyard, and I have like 2 yard games in my garage that are just sitting there gathering dust, and I was like, please take them. And it made me happy because my stuff was getting used, and it made her happy because she didn't have to go and buy these yard games that would only get used once or twice per year. By the way, if you want to borrow some yard games, let me know. Okay, and then usually Emily will take some time and talk about the Fix It Clinics program. We are going to be hearing from Ethan Skinner here. He is going to speak on a panel discussion on night 6. He'll give us a really great overview of the Fix It Clinics. Really quick, this is one of the programs that I manage. So residents can get their items repaired for free. Often residents might break their items at home, not have the skills to repair them, and they know that this item could get repaired somehow, but they don't have those skills. So we can match them with volunteers who have those skills. They can meet face-to-face, get some overview, some troubleshooting tips on how to actually repair that item. And then if not repairing the item can happen, they're at like the clinic, the fixer can offer them advice, or they're really great at like sending them to a local business to get their item fixed elsewhere, or else they can go buy a part somewhere else. So in 2022, we helped 384 residents mend and repair their items, and we prevented nearly 3,000 pounds of items from getting trashed. So we have about a 90% repair rate, which is pretty good. So that's a Fix It Clinic. So this is our most recent flyer. So the next one is coming up in Hastings on April 5th. So please go there, Pleasant Hill Library, and I can share that information later. Dakota County swaps. So we've been hosting swaps, specifically outdoor gear swaps. So again, a swap would be somebody has something that is collecting dust in their garage and they want to get rid of. And so instead of just donating it, they might bring it to a swap where somebody else might attend looking for that specific item. They can pick it up and take it for free. So we've hosted 4 outdoor gear swaps. We have one coming up on April 22nd at Thompson Park. That's where this one is currently this photo was taking place at. So we've helped about 200, last year we helped 233 residents attend the swap, drop off their gear, get new items. It's about 500 items that we saw last year. And then all the items that are left afterwards are donated to a local reuse retailer. We've set up a really nice partnership with Ally Supportive Services since we see a lot of camping gear. So Ally Supportive Services are based out of West St. Paul, and they actually outfit a lot of homeless individuals with camping supplies so that they can have access to better tents or stoves and lots of things like that. And we see lots of really great stuff, lots of good stories from there. Okay, so that's Dakota County swaps. I know that there's things happening in the chat. I'm trying to just speed through my PowerPoint. 8 o'clock. All right. So one of the other things that Dakota County does is we have a map online, the Donate, Rent, and Repair map. So this is something that I maintain on the back end, and I'm going to ask for your help to hopefully look at and see if there's anything missing. The way that the map currently functions is if you have a bunch of clothing, you would, and I see that's not listed on here, you would select clothing. It's like down in this area down below. You would select that you have clothing, and then it would like highlight all of the icons where you can get rid of clothing. Or if, for example, like afterwards, if you're like, hey, I want to learn about all the rental near me, you can go to this map and just select the rent button up here, and it'll show you all the rental that's near you. You can also search by address. So this map is only as good as the information that people give me, because I can't like go out and, you know, drive all the streets in Dakota County and identify the businesses that are still in business or out of business. So if you are using this map and you see something that's missing, let me know. I wanted to practice this tonight, but it's okay. I'll share the link with you afterwards. And then this is one of the last things that I'll mention is Dakota County has a lot of reduce and reuse built into our programs. So next week, I'm going to talk a lot more about recycling that in most of our programs, and that's like one of the key components. But we also fund a lot of reuse in our grant program. So I'm just going to shoot these off really quick. Our business recycling grant program, we provide things like we would pay for things like serviceware, water filling stations, dishwashers, software to help business reduce their waste, and shipping containers. So having reusable shipping containers, which is really cool. We have a multifamily recycling program. We would fund things like dishware, dishwashers, and then also we have donation partnerships where we could partner multifamily property with a reuse retailer, get them like a donation bin on site or donation location where residents can bring their items instead of throwing them away. They can put them in this central location and get it reused afterwards. The school waste prevention and recycling grant program, they are doing a lot. So this is our school recycling program. They have implemented at many of their schools, and maybe Jamie, who's on the call, is a part of some of this amazing work that's happening. But they fund things like bulk milk dispensers, water refill stations, reusable serviceware, dishwashing equipment. Lots of really great things are happening with the school program. And then I think we know from Christy's presentation, or you've been to the recycling zone, we have the reuse zone at the recycling zone where residents can leave things like hazardous waste or pesticides or paint, things like that, leave it. And then if somebody wants to come and take that item for free, they can. Obviously check in and out, but yeah, that's another thing that we offer residents. And then we provide funding for cities to do really, really cool things. And I wish I could just like sit here and tell you all the things that they're doing. But one of our cities is planning on implementing refill stations at like a large event. So instead of like having a bunch of water bottles going at events, people just buying water bottles and recycling them, they're finding a way to have a water refill station. Many of our cities are implementing swaps this year. So I saw that Dakota Valley Recycling is having a swap. It's a garden tool swap, and it's this weekend in Lakeville. I'll send more information on that as well, because they want more people to come. Another city is trying to do a reusable bag exchange at like farmers markets. So having a bunch of reusable bags instead of plastic bags. So our cities are just amazing. They're doing a lot of really cool things. And then we've done a lot of we're starting to do, research, because there's just a lot of gaps out there. We know that it just feels like there hasn't been a lot of like behavior research done on reuse, reduce. And I know that we are running short on time. I'd like to share more of our findings with you, so I'm just going to keep this really brief. So Dakota County just actually is wrapping up, like as we speak, a behavior reuse research that a contractor did. They surveyed 6, and Jenny, if you're still on, you can always like chime in and correct me, but they did surveys both in English and Spanish. These surveys were over the phone and online. They had a sample size of 600 Dakota County residents. And these were some of the things that they found. It's just really cool. They found that 90% of residents think that it is important for their household to reduce waste. So that's a great number. They found that 75% of residents associate buying secondhand with a positive impact on the environment. They found that the biggest challenges to donating are not knowing what's accepted. So I see that, and I know like that's something that we can just educate on that, right? We can tell people like what's accepted at these locations. We can promote the map, right? And I thought that this was a really cool highlight, that the biggest motivation listed by respondents for purchasing secondhand goods was that the items are cheaper, which is not necessarily always the case. I think that those of us that are buying used might know that that's not always the case. But now I feel like we can actually tap into, hey, like you could save some money if you buy used. Like often, like it is cheaper than just like going and buying something brand new. If you can buy used, then you might have some cost savings. So these are just some of the highlights. Again, I wish that we had more time so I could share more with you, but those are just some really key things that we learned. Okay, I know that we're out of time, so just going to fly through this. The recycling guide, Jenny mentioned this at the beginning of class, and I saw that others were chiming in saying that they use the recycling guide already. So the recycling guide is our online search function where it acts like Google, but it's for Dakota County. So if I was trying to do something like get rid of some furniture or like a chair, I could type in a chair in here. And the way that the recycling guide is built is that it will give me the best use first. So can that item, it'll give me reuse options first at the top of the list. So can that chair go to Goodwill or Savers, or can it be reused? If not, can that chair be recycled? So that'll be below the reuse search results. And then at the very bottom, it'll have disposal. So we're even building reuse into our online search functions, which I'm hoping it's helpful. I'm hoping that residents are actually using it in that way. So like before just recycling and disposing of that chair that might be reusable that somebody else could use, we are encouraging that first. Okay. So I know that we talked a lot about things that you can do at home. Don't get overwhelmed. Please don't get overwhelmed. That's why I mentioned the junk mail activity, because I feel like almost all of us get junk mail. And then, so that's why you can start collecting your junk mail, for example, over the next week. We'll I'll share, we have a guide on like tips of how to get off of these junk mail lists. That could be one concrete thing that you could do over the next week. But what else could you do? Could it be like just starting to take a reusable bag when you go to the grocery store? Could it be just buying your next pair of pants used? Like just start with one thing. That's all we're asking. All right, and that's basically it for me. We can do this. I know that, again, it's overwhelming when you start to think about all the things that you could do related to reduce and reuse and wasted food. But there's lots of things happening, and you can come to a Dakota County community event, and that can count as your first step. So come to a swap or a fix-it clinic, and we'll be happy to have you, and we're happy to give advice and insight into anything else that you may have.
So
Perfect.
there was just a general question. I think the only one that really came up was, do you publish what types of items can be repaired at fix-it clinics, like jewelry?
We have the types of items that can be repaired listed on our website. In fact, I thought I had it up. Yeah. So we have the types of items that you can take to the fix-it clinic. It's listed right on our website. So things like radios and stereos, vacuums, blenders, clothing to mend. The clothing should be clean. So yes, we do have that posted online.